What's going on, guys? This is Rob. We will continue our normal comic book stuff tomorrow, but the trailer for Thunderbolts just dropped, and I have a theory. Here's the thing, right? The theory is really, really cool. It's going to blow your mind, but here's what I think is going to happen over the course of the movie, truth to tell. I think that basically the Thunderbolts is going to be something akin to Team X. They're going to be used as a fall team by Contessa, because I think she's building Weapons Plus behind the scene. I know! A lot of you guys are just like, oh my god, Weapons Plus, yes, let me have my fun. I think that this guy is actually Abraham Cornelius, but we'll talk about him here in a second. I think that Bucky's gonna figure out that Contessa is using the team as a fall team with the intention of literally blaming everything on them, right, with all the stuff that's going on, and she's just gonna kind of leave them to their fate, right, leave them out to dry. So I think he ends up turning against Contessa, which I think leads to her lying to the rest of the team and telling them that Bucky's going rogue or something, hence the reason why those two groups fight each other in the trailer. I think the rest of the Thunderbolts learn about what Bucky was saying, that he was telling the truth. They all turn on Contessa, and then the Thunderbolts go on to be their own superhero team. Hence the asterisks at the end of the Thunderbolts name, right? I don't know. Thunderbolts, you know, the West Coast Avengers or something like that. Who knows, right? But they're going to go on and become their own team. Either that, or as Josh at Den of Nerds pointed out when he and I were talking, that a lot of them are going to die, and the ones who survive are going to end up coming across or joining Sam Wilson and his new Avengers, right? That basically Yelena will end up becoming the new Black Widow, that Centurion will become the new Hulk, you know, so on and so forth, right? It'll just kind of progress that way. So, having said all of that, here's what I think is happening, right, as far as like all the behind the scenes stuff. So I think that this guy being Abraham Cornelius is a huge thing. Now, for those of you guys who don't know who Abraham Cornelius is, you're probably wondering who it is that I'm talking about. Well, don't worry, folks, I'm gonna learn you, and I'm gonna learn you good. So Abraham Cornelius is basically the guy who was part of Weapons Plus, specifically Weapon X, when it came to the creation of Wolverine. Now, I do want to specify, I don't believe Wolverine's gonna have any role in this movie. I don't think there's gonna be a post-credit scene where like some guy's walking along and pops his claws or anything like that. It would be dope, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think this is going to be the extent of any of that stuff. Technically, Weapons Plus, Weapon X is largely X-Men stuff, but I think they're actually expanding it out. And I think they're turning Contessa into this person where she's not that dissimilar from Amanda Waller over at DC Comics, that she sees herself as the person that is like the last guard against like the meta-human community, right? Superhumans out there who are effectively dangerous as far as she's concerned. What I think is going to happen here is I think that with Cornelius, they're taking the idea of Weapons Plus and they're fast-tracking it and updating it to the modern era. Now, what do I mean by that? In Marvel Comics, Weapons Plus initially started with Captain America and Truett Hudson, which is to say that Steve Rogers was Weapon 1. That what had happened is that the government became aware of the fact that mutants were rising in prominence, and that there was a concerted effort to basically contain and control the mutant population within Marvel Comics. That what was supposed to happen with Captain America is that he was sent to World War II, which was going to be like a field test, right? If he performed well, he would be brought back to the States, his mind would be wiped, he'd be given new memories, and he would go forward as the first in a new line of super soldiers designed to contain and control the mutant population. Such as it was, he was frozen in a block of ice, and Abraham Erskine, the guy who made the super soldier serum, was killed. So there was no way to really duplicate the serum perfectly. Instead, what you got were just these different organizations, right? Russia's Department X, which gave us Black Widows, things like that. You had these different groups that were trying to create super soldier serums. Some got close, and some were so far away from the original, they might as well have not called it a super soldier serum at all. And so for a number of years, you had Weapons Plus creating these programs. Weapon 2, Weapon 3, Weapon 4, all the way up to Weapon 10, which is Wolverine. And even after Wolverine, you had Deadpool in the nursery, you had Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, who were all clones of Emma Frost. It kind of went on and on and on and on, and then in more recent years it's just kind of tapered off until they created Weapon H, where they basically merged the Incredible Hulk and Wolverine into a singular guy. Yes, that happened. Yes, it's dope. Yes, we covered it. So the cool thing about this is that what I think they're doing here is, instead of saying that like Weapons Plus started way back in the 40s when Truett Hudson discovered the journals of the villain Mr. Sinister and then realized they could use the information about like harnessing and utilizing superpowers to create superhumans, that what they're doing is they're doing it in the aftermath of everything that's happened up to this point. Because trace the history of the super soldier serum throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that Steve Rogers got it, and then Steve Rogers was frozen in ice. And around the time of World War II, there were like a couple other people who got it. Isaiah Bradley got it, as well as Bucky Barnes. And then over the years, it's been attained by various people. That we know Emil Blonsky got it, he became Abomination. We know that Wilfred Nagel basically recreated the super soldier serum in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that every copy of the serum was destroyed except for the ones that were taken by Diego, John Walker, and I think Carly Morgenthau. But basically like John Walker is the only one that really has it that we're aware of. So like very few people have this. And so when you look at things things like the first Avengers film, you look at Age of Ultron, you look at Infinity War, you look at Avengers Endgame, it makes perfect sense that the government would look at all these different threats and they would say, actually, the issue seems to be superheroes or the threats that are out there. So essentially, Contessa is doing a more extreme version of what Tony Stark did, where he wanted to build a suit of armor around the world. Contessa wants to create her own superhero team that can be controlled and monitored by her. And the Sentry is the first real successful test subject. That it could be one of these things where they've given the Sentry formula to different people over time, and they all died for whatever reason. And Robert Reynolds is the first one to survive it. Now, that's not how it happened in the comics. Robert Reynolds was just a crazed drug addict who snatched the serum up and consumed it and then just became super powerful. But the fact is, like, they can modify that history in any number of ways. There's any number of possibilities on how Contessa is building Weapons Plus, but I think Abraham Cornelius is the professor, the unnamed professor in Marvel Comics, because when the Sentry initially attained the Golden Century formula, it was just created by an unnamed professor, and it was a formula that basically was like 1,000 times more powerful than the super soldier serum, and it quote-unquote moved his atoms out of phase with the universe or something like that, which is just like the hand-wavy explanation of how he was able to do all the stuff that he could do, right? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I mean, comic book logic, right? Like a guy with a wrinkly chin got a magic glove that wiped out half the life in the universe. I think we're past using logic to make things make sense. So what I think would happen is they would say, like, Weapons Plus was created and is still being used by Contessa, that she's using it to create a super soldiers team. And maybe Thunderbolts will be like the antithesis to whatever that team happens to be. Maybe it's the Inhumans. They're trash. Wouldn't mind seeing them get smacked around a few times in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it could go any number of ways. What way it goes, I don't really know here, to be honest with you guys. But I do think it's cool, right? I think it's pretty dope, you know, with all the possibilities that they could do here. Because what it would mean is that the things that Contessa's working on and the things that she's building would go long after what's happening with Thunderbolts, right? It sets the stage for like more homegrown villain groups that could be faced off against by various heroes across the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As far as Sentry goes, with the grand level of power that he possesses in the comics, Sentry is so inconsistent in Marvel Comics, right? I mean, I don't think you're going to see the Sentry from Marvel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of what he can do. Because in Marvel Comics, for example, there is Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers Volume 2, who is the Sentry, where the Sentry literally just overpowers the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four at the same time. And it takes Emma Frost using her telepathy to go into the mind of Robert Reynolds and get him to regain control of himself. Technically, it's the Void who's doing all that stuff. So I think that what the Marvel Cinematic Universe will do is they'll basically just say the Sentry, he's comparable to the Hulk, right? Like, they're just going to have some hand-wavy instance, you know, where it's like they're showing him being developed, or they'll have some instance where like they show how hard he hits, you know, and it's like, man, how strong is this guy? He looks like he can hit as hard as the Hulk, right? And like, there's your strength level right there, right? He's equal to the Hulk in strength, and he can fly, and he's really durable, and that's it, right? I think this is going to be more references than like outright displays of what it is that he can do, but who knows, right? I have no idea how this movie's going to transpire, but that's my thought process. That's my theory. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Again, we'll pick back up with Absolute Power and Venom War and all that kind of stuff as we get throughout the rest of the week. I've been taking a break. Sometimes you just need a mental health break from YouTube. I will catch you all later. Peace.